Jacob handed the stranger his last $18. It was insane. Completely insane. He'd just been fired an hour ago, framed for something he didn't do. And now he was giving away the only money standing between him and his 7-year-old daughter going to bed hungry. But the woman beside him at the bus stop kept counting those crumpled bills, her hands shaking, and he couldn't watch her suffer. Not when he knew exactly what that kind of desperation felt like. So he gave it to her. All of it. She thanked him with tears in her eyes and got on the bus. And Jacob? He started the long walk home, wondering how he'd explain to Grace why there'd be nothing for dinner. The next morning, someone knocked on his door. When Jacob opened it, his heart stopped. 5 black SUVs lined the street outside his apartment. Men and women in expensive suits were stepping out. And walking toward him, dressed like she owned half the city, was her, the woman from the bus stop. Only now, she looked like someone who could buy and sell his entire neighborhood without blinking. "We need to talk," she said. What happened next? Jacob's life was never going to be the same. Before we continue, let us know in the comment section where in the world you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Jacob hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. His stomach had stopped growling hours ago. Now it just felt hollow, the same way everything else did. He walked through the dark streets, replaying the moment over and over. Marcus standing there with that smug look. Tina refusing to meet his eyes. His supervisor sliding the termination papers across the desk like it was already decided. "We have witnesses who saw you take the equipment, Jacob. Multiple witnesses." He'd never stolen anything in his life. But who was going to believe him over 2 people willing to lie? The bus stop appeared ahead, lit by a single flickering street light. Jacob dropped onto the bench and let his head fall back. His daughter, Grace, was waiting. Sweet, trusting Grace with her gap-toothed smile and her drawings of their family. Always 3 people, even though it had only been 2 for 3 years now. How was he supposed to tell her? A woman sat down beside him. Jacob barely noticed at first. Then he heard her breathing, quick, panicked, the kind that comes right before you fall apart completely. He glanced over. She was maybe late 30s, dressed in jeans and a shirt that had seen better days. Her hands were shaking as she counted a handful of bills and coins. Once, twice, 3 times. Each time, her face fell a little more. "Excuse me," she said quietly. Her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but do you have any change? I'm short for the bus fare." Jacob looked at her. Really looked at her. There were tear tracks on her cheeks. Her eyes had that glazed, desperate look he'd seen in his own mirror too many times. He pulled out his wallet. $18. That was it. That was everything. If he gave it to her, he'd have to walk the 4 miles home. Grace would ask why he was so late. Mrs. Kate would worry. And tomorrow there'd be nothing for breakfast. But this woman was breaking right in front of him. Jacob held out the money. "Here, take it." She stared at the bills like they were a lifeline. "I can't. That's too much. I just need—" "Please," Jacob said, "just take it." Her hands trembled as she accepted the money. I don't even know what to say. Thank you doesn't feel like enough." "It's okay," Jacob said, even though it wasn't. Even though he had no idea how he'd make it through tomorrow. "I'm Charlotte," she said, wiping her eyes. "I'm not usually... tonight's been..." She couldn't finish. "Jacob, and I get it. Bad nights happen." The bus pulled up with a hiss of brakes. Charlotte stood, clutching the money. I'm going to pay you back. I don't know how yet, but I will. I promise. Jacob nodded, not believing her. People always said things like that. They never followed through. That was just how the world worked. Charlotte got on the bus, and it drove away, leaving Jacob alone under the broken streetlight. 4 miles, in the dark, on an empty stomach. He started walking. Grace was already asleep when he finally made it home. Mrs. Kate had fed her dinner, mac and cheese, she said, and stayed late without charging extra. She was good like that. One of the only good things left in Jacob's life. Jacob stood in Grace's doorway, watching her sleep. She had his wife's nose, Sarah's way of curling up on her side with one hand tucked under her cheek. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." He didn't sleep that night, just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills he couldn't pay, wondering what came next. Maybe there was construction work. Day labor paid cash. It wouldn't be enough, but it would be something. The knock came at 8 in the morning. Jacob had been awake for hours, nursing his 3rd cup of watered-down coffee. Grace was eating cereal, the last of it, and humming a song from school. "I'll get it," Jacob said, expecting Mrs. Kate or maybe the landlord coming early to remind him rent was due. He opened the door and froze. 5 black SUVs lined the street. Actual SUVs, the kind with tinted windows and chrome that caught the morning sun. People in suits were standing beside them, men and women, who looked like they'd stepped out of a corporate magazine. And walking up his cracked sidewalk, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his rent, was Charlotte, the woman from the bus stop. But she didn't look anything like the broken person who'd counted change with shaking hands. She looked powerful, confident, like someone who could make or break lives with a phone call. "Hello, Jacob," she said. His mouth wouldn't work. He just stood there, aware of how shabby his apartment must look, how he was still in yesterday's clothes, how Grace was calling from inside, asking who it was. "Can we talk?" Charlotte asked. "I promised I'd pay you back." Jacob finally found his voice. "You didn't have to. It was just..." He gestured helplessly at the SUVs. "What is all this?" "My security team, my assistant, my attorney." Charlotte smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Can I come in?" Jacob stepped aside, his mind reeling. Grace appeared in the hallway, her eyes going wide. "Daddy, who are all those people?" "Hey, sweetheart," Charlotte said, crouching down. "I'm Charlotte. I'm a friend of your dad's." "You're pretty," Grace said. "Do you like soccer? I have a game on Saturday." "Grace," Jacob said, "why don't you finish your breakfast?" Charlotte waited until Grace skipped back to the kitchen. Then she turned to Jacob, and her professional mask cracked just a little. "Last night, I was robbed," she said quietly. "They took my car, my phone, my wallet, everything. Left me stranded downtown with nothing." "I'm sorry," Jacob said. "That's terrible, but I own a marketing firm, Lancaster and Associates. Maybe you've heard of it?" She didn't wait for an answer. 50 employees, 15 million in annual revenue. Last night, someone set me up. Someone close to me wanted me vulnerable, wanted me gone, and they almost succeeded. Jacob's head spun. "I don't understand. Why are you telling me this?" Charlotte's eyes locked on his. "Because when I had nothing, when everyone else walked past me like I was invisible, you gave me everything you had. A complete stranger. You gave me your last dollar." "It was $18, Jacob said weakly. "It was everything," Charlotte corrected. "And now I want to know, why? Why did you do it?" Jacob sank onto the couch. "I don't know. You looked like I felt. Like the world had just taken everything and you were barely hanging on. I couldn't just walk away, even though you'd just lost your job. Jacob's head snapped up. How did you? I do my research, Charlotte said. I know you were fired yesterday. I know it wasn't your fault. And I know you're raising your daughter alone. She sat across from him. Tell me what happened. So he did. The whole miserable story spilled out. Sarah's death, the struggle to keep Grace fed and clothed, the job that barely paid enough, Marcus and Tina's lies, the termination he couldn't fight. Charlotte listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. I need someone I can trust, she finally said. Someone with integrity. Someone who does the right thing even when it costs them everything. She leaned forward. Come work for me, Jacob. Help me find out who betrayed me, and let me give you the second chance you gave me. Jacob stared at her. You're offering me a job? A real one, full benefits. Salary that'll let you take care of Grace the way she deserves. Charlotte's expression softened. I'm not doing this out of pity. I'm doing it because last night you showed me who you are. And that's exactly who I need on my team. Grace appeared in the doorway again, staring at Charlotte with wide eyes full of hope. Jacob looked at his daughter, then at Charlotte, then at the life he'd been trying so hard to hold together with both hands. Okay, he said. Yes, I'll do it. Charlotte smiled, a real smile this time. Good, because we have a lot of work to do. Jacob's first day at Lancaster and Associates felt like stepping into another universe. The office occupied 3 floors of a glass building downtown. Everything gleamed, polished marble, modern art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. People moved through the halls with purpose, their voices confident, their clothes expensive. Jacob felt like an imposter in his department store shirt and borrowed tie. Charlotte met him in the lobby herself. Ignore the looks, she said quietly. Half these people wouldn't last a day in your shoes. Come on. She led him to a conference room where a man in his 50s sat reviewing documents. Salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, the kind of face that didn't miss anything. This is Richard Torres, my CFO, Charlotte said. Richard, this is Jacob Miller. He's going to help us figure out what happened. Richard looked Jacob up and down. No offense, Ms. Lancaster, but what exactly are his qualifications? He's someone I trust, Charlotte said firmly. That's more valuable than any degree right now. Over the next 2 hours, they laid it out for him. Charlotte had been working late at the office 3 nights ago. Her assistant, Derek Anderson, had insisted she take his car since hers was in the shop. She'd driven to a client dinner downtown, and when she came out, the car was gone. Her phone had been in it, her wallet, everything. Derek reported it stolen immediately, Richard said. Very concerned, very helpful. Even offered to let Charlotte stay at his place that night. But you didn't, Jacob said, looking at Charlotte. Something felt off, she admitted. The timing was too convenient. And when I checked my credit cards the next morning, someone had tried to use them at 3 different locations. Like they were testing the limits before the accounts got frozen. Jacob leaned back. You think Derek set it up? I think someone did, Charlotte said carefully. And Derek's the obvious choice. But I need proof before I accuse him. He's been with me for 4 years. If I'm wrong, you destroy an innocent person's life, Jacob finished. He knew exactly how that felt. Exactly. Charlotte slid a folder across the table. This is everything we have so far. Transaction records, timeline, security footage from the restaurant. I need you to look at it with fresh eyes. Jacob opened the folder, his hands not quite steady. Numbers and documents. He'd been working factory floors for years, not investigating corporate theft. But he understood betrayal. He understood the way people smiled to your face while sliding a knife between your ribs. "I'll do my best," he said. The work consumed him. Jacob spent his days combing through expense reports, cross-referencing receipts, tracking patterns. Charlotte had given him a small office with a computer and told him to dig. What he found made his stomach turn. Derek had been skimming for at least 18 months. Small amounts at first, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, buried in legitimate expenses. But it had escalated. In the last 6 months alone, nearly $80,000 had vanished into ghost vendors and inflated invoices. He needed the robbery, Jacob told Charlotte one evening, spreading printouts across her desk. "Look at this. 2 weeks ago, your external auditors scheduled a review." Derek would have known he was about to get caught. Charlotte studied the documents, her jaw tight. So, he stages a robbery, makes himself look like the helpful assistant, and in the chaos. "He planned to disappear," Jacob said. "Blame it on whoever stole the car. By the time you pieced it together, he'd be gone. Except I ran into you instead," Charlotte said softly. "And you brought me home, and I started asking questions faster than he expected." Richard appeared in the doorway. "We have enough for the police?" "More than enough," Jacob said. Charlotte picked up her phone. "Then let's end this." The police arrested Derek the next morning. He'd been planning to leave the country that weekend. They found the tickets on his computer. As they let him out in handcuffs, he looked at Charlotte with such hatred that Jacob instinctively stepped closer to her. "You would have lost everything without that homeless guy helping you," Derek spat. "You got lucky." "No," Charlotte said coldly. "I got smart. There's a difference." After Derek was gone, the office felt lighter. People smiled more. Charlotte walked the halls without the weight of betrayal on her shoulders. And somehow, in the middle of all of it, Jacob had become part of the team. Not just the guy investigating fraud, an actual employee. People asked his opinion in meetings. They invited him to lunch. Richard clapped him on the shoulder and called him a natural. For the first time in 3 years, Jacob felt like himself again. "Daddy, is Charlotte coming to my game?" Grace bounced on her toes, her soccer uniform slightly too big, her cleats tied in uneven bows. It was Saturday morning, and the field was packed with parents setting up folding chairs and kids warming up. "I don't know, sweetheart," Jacob said, even though Charlotte had promised she'd try. "She's really busy." "But she said she wanted to see me play." Charlotte had been spending more time with them. Dinners after work, once or twice a week. She'd helped Grace with a school project. She'd brought coffee to the apartment on Sunday mornings and sat at their tiny kitchen table like she belonged there. And Jacob was falling apart. Because somewhere between the investigation and the late-night strategy sessions and the way Charlotte laughed at Grace's terrible jokes, he'd started feeling things he had no business feeling. She was his boss. She'd saved his life. And he was just... Jacob. He turned. Charlotte was jogging across the parking lot, dressed in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back, looking nothing like the CEO who commanded boardrooms. Grace shrieked and ran to her. Charlotte scooped her up, spinning her around. "You came," Grace said. "Of course I came. I promised, didn't I?" Charlotte set her down and looked at Jacob. "Sorry I'm late. Conference call ran long." "It's Saturday," Jacob said. Tell that to the clients." She smiled, and something in Jacob's chest twisted. "Come on, I want good seats for this." They sat together on the bleachers, Charlotte cheering louder than anyone when Grace scored a goal in the second half. Afterward, they got ice cream, Grace's choice, and walked through the park while Grace ran ahead, still buzzing with energy. "She's amazing," Charlotte said. "You're doing an incredible job with her." "I'm trying," Jacob said. "Some days are harder than others." "I can imagine." Charlotte was quiet for a moment. "My parents divorced when I was 8. My dad disappeared, just gone one day. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us fed." She watched Grace climb a tree, fearless. "I built my company because I never wanted to feel that powerless again. But watching you two, I think maybe I've been missing the point." "What do you mean?" "Power doesn't mean anything if you're alone," Charlotte said softly. "You have something I've been chasing my whole life. You have family, love, purpose beyond a profit margin." Jacob's heart hammered. "Charlotte, Charlotte, look," Grace called. "I'm a monkey." The moment broke. Charlotte laughed and waved, but when Jacob glanced at her, she was still looking at him, and the air between them felt electric. They were in dangerous territory now, and Jacob had no idea how to step back. Over the next month, the lines blurred completely. Charlotte came to every soccer game. She taught Grace how to braid hair, something Jacob had never mastered. She brought groceries when she visited, fancy things Jacob couldn't afford, and pretended it was no big deal. Grace started drawing pictures of 3 people again, her, Daddy, and Charlotte. And Jacob was terrified. Because he was in love with her. Completely, irreversibly in love. And he had no idea if she felt the same way, or if he was just a charity project that had gotten out of hand. He couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk losing the job that had saved them. Couldn't risk Grace getting attached to someone who might walk away. But every time Charlotte smiled at him, every time her hand brushed his, every time she looked at Grace like she was something precious, Jacob was drowning, and he didn't know how to save himself. Before we continue, we need your opinion. What would you do if you were Jacob? Should he risk everything and tell Charlotte how he feels? Or is confessing to your boss, who saved your life, a terrible idea that could cost him everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. We want to know what you think Jacob should do. And if you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Grace had drawn another picture at school. Her, Jacob, and Charlotte holding hands under a rainbow. She'd written "My Family" across the top in wobbly letters. "Can I give it to Charlotte?" Grace asked at dinner. "I made it special for her." Jacob stared at the drawing, his throat tight. "Sure, baby. She'll love it." But after Grace went to bed, Jacob sat alone in the dark, that picture on the table in front of him, and realized he couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep pretending. Couldn't keep letting Grace build a fantasy that might shatter. He had to tell Charlotte the truth, even if it meant losing everything, even if it meant breaking his daughter's heart. Saturday came with perfect weather. Sunshine, clear skies, the kind of day that made everything feel possible. Grace's team was playing their rivals, and the stands were packed. Charlotte arrived early, carrying a poster she'd made with Grace's jersey number on it. Grace screamed with delight when she saw it. "You made that for me?" "Of course," Charlotte said, grinning. "Now go out there and show them what you've got." Grace ran onto the field, and Charlotte settled beside Jacob on the bleachers. She was wearing jeans and a blue sweater that matched her eyes, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked happy, relaxed, more beautiful than Jacob had any right to notice. "She's been talking about this game all week," Charlotte said. "Apparently Tommy Henderson said girls can't play soccer as good as boys, and Grace took that personally." Jacob laughed despite his nerves. "That sounds like her." They watched the game in comfortable silence for a while. Grace was playing forward, darting around defenders with fierce determination. Every time she touched the ball, Charlotte jumped up, cheering. In the second half, Grace scored. A perfect shot to the bottom corner that left the goalkeeper diving too late. Charlotte grabbed Jacob's arm, shaking him. "Did you see that? Oh my God, did you see that?" "I saw it," Jacob said. But he wasn't looking at the field anymore. He was looking at Charlotte, at the pure joy on her face, the way she celebrated Grace's victory like it was her own. And he knew, right then, he couldn't keep this inside anymore. The game ended with Grace's team winning 3-2. Grace ran over, sweaty and triumphant, and Charlotte hugged her tight. "You were incredible out there." "Did you see my goal, Daddy?" "I saw it, baby. I'm so proud of you." Jacob's voice came out rough. "Hey, why don't you go celebrate with your team? Charlotte and I need to talk for a minute." Grace looked between them, suddenly serious. "Are you guys okay?" "We're fine," Charlotte said quickly. "Go have fun. We'll get ice cream after." Grace ran off, and Charlotte turned to Jacob. "What's wrong? You look like you're about to throw up." "I need to tell you something," Jacob said. His hands were shaking. "And I need you to let me get through it before you say anything, okay?" Charlotte's smile faded. "Jacob, you're scaring me." "I'm in love with you," he blurted out. The words tumbled over each other, desperate to escape. "I know I shouldn't be. I know you're my boss and you saved my life, and this is probably the most inappropriate thing I could say, but I can't keep pretending. I wake up thinking about you. I go to sleep thinking about you. Grace draws pictures of the three of us like we're a family, and every time she does, my heart breaks a little more because I want that so badly it hurts." Charlotte stood frozen, her eyes wide. "I understand if this changes everything," Jacob continued. "I understand if you need me to resign. I'll do whatever you want. I couldn't keep lying. Not to you. You deserve the truth." The silence stretched between them. Parents were packing up around them. Kids were running past. But Jacob's entire world had narrowed to Charlotte's face. "Are you done?" she finally asked. Jacob nodded, not trusting his voice. Charlotte stepped closer. "Good, because I've been waiting 2 months for you to say that." "What?" "Jacob Miller, you are the most frustrating man I've ever met." Her eyes were bright. "Do you think I go to every soccer game for just anybody? Do you think I spend my Sundays in your tiny apartment drinking bad coffee because I'm being charitable?" You thought wrong," Charlotte said. "I've been in love with you since the day you handed me that money at the bus stop. Since the day you looked at me like I was a person who mattered, not a transaction or an opportunity. And every day since then, I've been trying to figure out how to tell you without making things weird at work." Jacob's brain had stopped working. You love me?" "Yes, you idiot." Charlotte laughed, and it sounded like crying. "I love you. I love Grace. I love the way you make terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings, and how you always put her needs before your own, and how you're kind even when the world has given you every reason not to be." "Charlotte," she kissed him. Right there on the bleachers with half the soccer parents watching, Charlotte grabbed his face and kissed him like she'd been holding back for months. And maybe she had been. Maybe they both had. Jacob kissed her back, his hands in her hair, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. She tasted like hope, like second chances, like everything he'd been too afraid to want. When they finally broke apart, Grace was standing 3 feet away, her mouth hanging open. "Does this mean Charlotte is my new mom?" Charlotte burst out laughing. Jacob buried his face in his hands. "How about we start with girlfriend and see how it goes?" Charlotte said, pulling Grace into a hug. "Can we still get ice cream?" "Absolutely." 1 month later, Jacob proposed. It wasn't fancy. No restaurant, no elaborate plan. Just the 3 of them in the park where they'd walked that first day after Grace's game. Grace had picked wildflowers and woven them into a crown for Charlotte. And when Charlotte put it on, laughing, Jacob realized he couldn't wait another second. He got down on one knee right there in the grass. "I don't have a ring yet," he said, "and I know this is fast, but I've lost enough time in my life. I don't want to lose any more. Charlotte Lancaster, will you marry us?" Charlotte's hands flew to her mouth. "Us?" Grace nodded seriously. "We're a package deal." "Then yes," Charlotte said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll marry you. Both of you." Grace shrieked and tackled them both, and they collapsed in a heap on the grass, laughing and crying and holding on to each other like they'd never let go. The wedding was small, just close friends and family in Charlotte's backyard. Grace was the flower girl, taking her job very seriously, scattering petals with intense concentration. When Jacob saw Charlotte walking toward him in her simple white dress, her eyes locked on his. He thought about the night at the bus stop, the night he'd given away his last $18 because he couldn't stand to watch someone suffer. He'd thought he was giving her everything he had. But really, she'd been the one giving him everything. A job, a future, a family, a life worth living again. "You okay?" Charlotte whispered when she reached him. "I'm perfect," Jacob said. And for the first time in 3 years, he meant it. 6 months later, they were walking through that same park, Jacob, Charlotte, and Grace. The evening sun painted everything gold, and Grace was running ahead, chasing butterflies. "Daddy, look. Charlotte, come see." Charlotte squeezed Jacob's hand. "She's going to be a scientist, or an explorer, something that involves running everywhere." "As long as she's happy," Jacob said. They walked in comfortable silence, watching their daughter discover the world. Jacob thought about everything that had led to this moment. The job loss that had felt like the end. The stranger on the bench who'd needed help. The choice to give when he had nothing left to give. "You know what's funny?" Charlotte said. "If Derek hadn't set me up, if I hadn't been robbed that night, we never would have met." "Don't give him credit for this," Jacob said. "I'm not. I'm just saying. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best things." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes you find exactly what you need when you stop looking for it." Grace ran back to them, breathless and grinning. "Can we get dinner? I'm starving." "Pizza," Charlotte suggested. "Always pizza," Grace said. They walked toward the car, Grace between them, holding both their hands. Just a normal family on a normal evening. Nothing special. Everything special. Because sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness change everything. Sometimes, giving someone your last dollar means getting back more than you ever imagined. And sometimes, when you're at your lowest point, when you think there's nothing left worth fighting for, that's when life surprises you. That's when you realize the story isn't over. It's just beginning. If this story touched your heart, We'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and join the Soul Story family. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And drop a comment telling us about a time when a small act of kindness changed your life. We read every single one, and your stories inspire us to keep sharing these messages of hope. Until next time, remember, you never know how one moment of compassion can transform everything.